Hello and welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. Today's guest is Dave Weikel. Dave is the manager of sports medicine at Franciscan Health in Indianapolis, Indiana. Dave also that's his day job, directing athletic trainers over that do outreach coverage to Indianapolis and surrounding high schools. Dave also is the lead athletic trainer for USA Football. And has traveled around the world doing that. He's also a medical observer for Ball State football games and is a renowned speaker that's requested quite a bit for EAPs. He was one of the athletic trainers that helped the official at the 2021 NCAA tournament that collapsed during the tournament there. Was actually speaker at NATA this past summer in Indianapolis talking about EAPs, right up there on stage with the Buffalo Bills athletic trainers talking about their EAPs for stuff regarding emergency action plans and how to take care of emergencies on site. So Dave has a great story to tell, an interesting story to tell about his career, and we have a great conversation today. So let's go off the roll with Dave Weikel. Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. We're recording today from my lovely shop area. We have Dave Weikel. Dave is the sports medicine. I don't know if I can get this right. Are you the sports medicine manager for Franciscan Sport Health?
For Franciscan Health Sports Medicine, yes.
Yeah, there we go. I kind of got it right. So, but we're lucky to have Dave on here. Dave's the one of the more recent Ring of Honor inductees, and had a great ceremony this summer. And so I'm honored to have Dave on. Dave, welcome to Off the Roll.
Thanks, Troy. It's an honor to be here. I've listened to several of these over. Wow, it's been at least a couple of years now that you've been doing these.
Yeah,
I think.
about a little over a year and a half that we've done this. Yeah.
So it's been cool to listen to some names from the past and a few that I hadn't heard of in the past. So it's been fun. So was excited to get the invite.
Yeah, great. Well, let's get going. So first of all, where's your hometown at?
My hometown, as far as where I am currently.
No, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally I was born up in South Bend, Indiana, and then I consider growing up in Chicago, far north suburb of Chicago. That's where I went to high school and had my formative years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But we bounced around a little bit as a kid. Lived in Ohio, lived in Illinois, Ohio. So take your pick.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that because your dad's job, mom's job?
Yeah.
What was? Yeah.
My dad's job. He actually used to work for Sears. He was like a service technician. One of the guys that come out and fix your refrigerator or washer, dryer, or whatever, which has come in handy over the years.
I bet, yeah.
And then he got into administration and worked with some different, got transferred around to different locations. And then actually before he retired, he was actually working in what I still call the Sears Tower downtown in Chicago.
Wow.
Whatever it's called now, Wilson Tower or whatever.
I have no idea.
It's like Deer Creek, right? I mean, it's always going to be Deer Creek. That's always going to be the Sears Tower. So yeah.
Awesome. So pretty much high school in Chicago
then. Yeah. I went to Lake Zurich High School, which is, like I said, far northwest side. It's actually probably closer to the Wisconsin state line than it is to downtown Chicago, but it's still, I guess, technically part of the conglomerate of suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah. So playing sports in high school?
I did. I played football. Football's always been my passion. I've played since as early as I could play. I think first time I remember specifically playing like with pads and stuff, I think was like third grade.
Oh wow.
Um, so I played football all the way through. That was my main sport. I dabbled in some others. I played baseball. Um, I tried wrestling for 1 year, and coach talked me into it because I fit the weight class that they needed. Um, had never done anything, and that's actually that's how I got my introduction to athletic training.
Okay.
Similar story as a lot of athletic trainers. Got hurt in high school, dislocated my shoulder. We didn't have an athletic trainer at that time at high school, so coach kind of got it back in, and I was like, all right. Next day it was a little sore, but felt okay. Popped it right back out, and that time it didn't go back in, and um, so yeah, that's how I got my introduction to sports medicine and athletic trainers and orthopedic surgeons and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was your 1 year of wrestling. Your shoulder gets.
Yeah, it lasted about, I think I got maybe 2 or 3 matches in before that happened. So that was a short-lived adventure into high school wrestling.
Can I ask what weight class you were?
Man, I think it was 171.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I've been out of the high school setting a little bit. I don't even know what the current weight classes
Yeah.
are anymore.
I have no. I got to deal with that stuff, and I only know enough to do the weigh-in type stuff,
Yeah.
and then that's the kids know more than I do, and I just kind of roll with it. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 171 because I was a little over that because I was like, I had one coach talking me into it, and then my football coach telling me that he didn't because I was going to have to cut a little bit, not much.
Yeah.
And he wanted me, of course, you get into that battle with football, you need to be bigger and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the wrestling coach, well, you're only cutting, 4 or 5 pounds. So whatever.
Yeah, we kind of have that problem with some of our kids. Their football playing weight, and then we have like an early meet in November that they want to go to. And I ran into a couple situations last year where kids were trying to cut weight too fast because they were at their football playing weight, and then they wanted to wrestle what they normally wrestle at um, in this wrestling meet. And I was like, yeah, that's not a good idea. That's not going to happen. You can get
Right.
down. You got plenty of time to get down to your final weight before the end of December, and you need to do that safely. So um, uh, they didn't like it, but
Yeah,
that's what we had to do. So
that's right. That's
yeah.
right.
So you get hurt in high school. You're was that your senior year that you did that, or was it junior
That
year?
was my
sophomore?
junior year. Because I was really, um, I was really worried that I was going to miss my senior year of football because they were talking about surgery and, you know, might not be back in time, and we're talking like late 80s. So it's not,
Oh yeah.
some of the procedures weren't quite as good as they are now. Um, and so, again, in hindsight, it kind of turned out, I think, for the best because I didn't end up doing surgery and just rehab the heck out of it and was working with a guy that was a PTAT. And that's how I kind of got interested in, I had never even heard of athletic training at that point. And so we went that route to try to, see if we could kind of milk it through to get into football season my senior year, which we were able to, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then I never did get it. I mean, one day I'm sure there's days I wish I would have gotten it fixed, but so far we've been able to manage.
Yeah. Good. So you get your introduction into athlete training. It's your senior year. You're playing football. Fortunately, you don't have a problem during football. I take it. You kind of get through that a little bit. So
Yep.
in your mind, like, what are you thinking? Like, was it piquing your interest then, or did you have other ideas that you wanted to do something, or where you wanted to go? I mean, kind of where were you at?
I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember I was in some like career class. I don't remember what it was. And we had to do a report on 3 careers. And I literally just I don't remember exactly what they were, but I just and again, back in the old days, I just went to the newspaper and looked at in the classifieds or different jobs, and I picked like whatever. I was like architecture, like art administrator, and it was like whatever the first
Yeah,
three jobs
exactly.
were in the alphabet, and that's what I did. I had no idea what I was going to do. Um, like I said, once I started working, going through rehab for my shoulder, I at least had an interest, and I was like, oh, this would be kind of cool. Not really knowing anything about it or what all was involved with it. Um, and then, um, I remember, like your junior and senior year, you get like tons of mail just from random colleges.
Right.
All of a sudden, several of them you never even heard of. That was like me. I like Ball State, got something from Ball State, and it was like, and it was Ball State that jumped out. The only reason I looked at it was because of the name. I was like, I've never even heard of this place. Like,
Right.
where is Ball State? Um, and so I looked through it and I saw they had athletic training listed as one of their majors. And I was like, huh. So I kind of actually kept that one, pulled that one aside. And the only thing I ever kind of got halfway serious of looking into was um, for a short stint, I was thinking I was going to go into veterinary medicine um, till I found out that it was harder to get into than medical school. So I, I
Yeah.
I changed gears pretty quick on that one, and then just ended up kind of giving athletic training
Right.
a shot, and came to did an official visit at Ball State. Again, never having heard of it or not knowing anything about it, and just kind of fell in love with the campus. And um, Dave Jessup, of all people, was the guy that kind of gave me the initial tour, at least through the old Irving gym and
Right.
the old training room there, and met with Rex a little bit briefly, and then talked to whoever else you talk to on those trips, advisors and academic
It'd
counselors.
be
And
hard to tell because that was probably what, 88,
that
87.
was like 87. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of like you probably talked to Mike or Cindy or somebody like that.
Yeah, I think it was Cindy. Because
Yeah.
Mike, I think, came in after I started there, I think. I can't remember for sure, but
Yeah. I know Mike
um,
was there before and then he was off to Penn State or something to do his doctorate
yeah,
and was coming back
yeah,
because I was kind of in that same boat too. That
yeah. Because we
yeah,
were in the same class, I think. We
yeah,
we
yeah,
both
we were.
graduated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I just remember like I met with Mike one time, and then I was all of a sudden I was calling to kind of find out what the situation was, and they routed me to Cindy, and I think I came over again one other time, and Cindy goes, "Well, I'm in charge now until Mike comes back or something like that." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, whatever."
yeah,
I didn't. I was kind of like you. You didn't know any different, so you just kind of just went, "Oh, okay."
yeah, yeah. I still didn't really know what I was doing, even at that point. I was just like, I knew I wasn't good enough to play in college. Actually, I almost went to a junior college just to keep playing, and thankfully, my parents talked me out of that.
Yeah,
Um, but I knew I wasn't good enough to play like anywhere decent. And initially it was just like, oh, this is cool. I'll get to stay involved in sports, and still not really knowing what it all entailed, but it was sports. And so that was the initial attraction for me.
yeah. So I mean, your mom, dad didn't encourage you to like, hey, go look at some in-state schools, or was it like, no, this is really what I want to do?
No, I did look at Northern Illinois. Um, that was probably my second choice. And there was there was some conversation because obviously it was going to be more affordable in state. But Ball State, actually, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, I actually had pretty good grades, and so Ball State was able to get me on a scholarship that basically paid the out of state tuition. Um, so it was like the same as going to an in-state
Yeah,
schools.
yeah, okay, yeah,
So so yeah, that worked out pretty well. But yeah, Northern was really the only other. And I did briefly. I think there was a small school up in Wisconsin, maybe Wisconsin Lacrosse, or
hmm
I don't remember, somewhere up in Wisconsin that I had briefly considered. But once I saw Ball State, I just, sometimes you just know, right? I mean, you
Right.
got there and it was just like everything felt right and everything just clicked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, the people that were there,
Yeah.
I think that was always the biggest factor in the aspect of just the connection that the time that Rex probably gave you on your visit, you don't really remember, but at the time it was impressionable, and um, it was meaningful in the aspect of like, yeah, I want to come here and learn with this guy, um,
Right.
because he actually took time to see me and stuff. And I think if you think about all the consistencies of um, people have come through the program, that's been a big factor. I mean, if you even when you go back to JD and Hoove and those guys meeting Bud, I mean, Bud gave him time. He talked to him, he showed him stuff, and um, so yeah, there was an attraction. Not so much sometimes the place; it was the people that were there. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it was definitely a great time to. It was a great time to come in.
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
so you get on campus. So you get on campus the fall of '87, correct? Does that sound about right?
Fall of 88.
Fall of '88. Okay.
Yep.
Um, do you remember what you got to do right away? I mean, did you have to do some observation stuff
Had to do
or
observation hours. I'll never forget initially, we were there, whatever. I can't remember. We had like our set times, and then you just end up, at least I did, and a lot of us did, end up just going all the time, even if you
right?
weren't necessarily scheduled to be there. Um, but I will say, I do remember I have this very vivid memory of being in the old Irving Gym training room, um, back in the hydro area, crushing cans for the sports medicine uh, uh, club.
Yeah,
And remember, those used to be like a big fundraiser for us back then
yeah.
because we collect all these aluminum cans and get them. And I don't know how much money we got for them, but I just remember me and Chad Kerwin. If you remember Chad,
Yeah.
he's fallen off the grid since, but Chad and I back there just stomping cans, crushing them down. And we look at each other like, what are we doing? Like, we're, we're just back here smashing cans, like, whatever. And like, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, so that's that was one of my earliest memories of the program and being like, this is kind of cool and all, but I don't know about this can smashing part. But
Imagine kids.
uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it worked out. You have your obviously your intro classes and stuff, and then I did get to work, um, kind of work spring football like that following, like, my first spring, I guess spring of '89, that would have been.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when it really kind of clicked that, okay, yeah, I still didn't really know what I was doing. Obviously, only having a couple of intro classes. Because I wasn't like a student trainer in high school. I had no exposure to it. We had no athletic
Right.
trainer in high school. So other than the rehab that I did at a sports medicine clinic, still didn't know a whole lot about what the heck athletic training was all about. Um, but just being exposed to it during spring ball and watching, obviously the staff, Rex and those guys, but also the students that, had some experience doing things. That's what really kind of sealed the deal, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, going into my sophomore year, I was fortunate to be able to work with Tony with men's basketball. And then from then on, it was just, yeah, it just was a no brainer. It just
Yeah.
kind of flew from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that always um resonated with me was that athlete training back then, um like all your friends that were like in the architecture program or someplace else, I mean, they were kind of doing stuff, but they really weren't doing
Right.
a whole lot. And um they were taking classes, and they might be, you know exercise science, they might be coming up with some exercise programs or something like that for classes, but they weren't really doing anything. And it just seemed like athletic training was one of those situations that you were actually doing something. Whether it was um, go over there and help that redshirt freshman kid that I don't want to deal with. That's your project, or I need your help with this. What do you think? You're in this class. What do you think about this type thing? And I think that's the thing. If you had the personality type like I did, you felt like you're making an impact, and
Right.
that really resonated in the aspect of like you were part of something. You were part of something bigger than yourself. You were part of something that was um, you could actually see results from. That
Right.
wasn't you were going to have to wait till they get to the workforce to start
Right.
doing those things. So
No, absolutely. You could apply what you were learning like sometimes the same day. I mean, depending
yeah,
on what's going on, and seeing, learning about it in class, but then being able to actually do it, you know, during practice and events and stuff like that. To your point, instead of waiting and to an internship or, your first job, and you're like, yeah, I've already done this. We've done it for
right,
the last 2 years, 2+ years as a student at school.
yeah, yeah. No, that was a golden age, and now you like I know that I've had discussions with other and not knocking the education programs now, but had those discussions with younger athletic trainers and you especially like you talk about travel, like, oh yeah, we traveled by ourselves all the time. It wasn't a big deal,
Right.
and they're like, oh, they let you travel like with no other certifieds. I'm like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we were it. It's funny, like the last podcast when I interviewed Ken Wolford, and he's talking about, doing because I knew nothing, and I'm off going on, these trips to baseball trips and stuff that I just had to figure out stuff on my own, or I'd find the athlete trainer there and they would help me, and
Right.
that's kind of the way it was. I mean, nobody, as I like to term it, nobody died, nobody was
That's
permanently
right.
maimed by the fact that I was just a student and stuff. And I get what we're trying to do in the aspect of professionalism, but um, I I really there's no better way to learn than being on your own,
Right.
and
No, I agree. I struggle with that myself, and especially, in the position I am in now, when you're interviewing some of these kids, they're kids to me
yeah,
now. I'm getting old, um, but you're interviewing these new grads, and you know, book smarts and skills that they have are honestly probably better than what we came out of school with from a
right,
books smarts standpoint, but just the lack of application and hands-on experiences is, I mean, it's night and day from, what kind of what I would hope that they would have had the opportunity to do versus what they're kind of somewhat restricted to do. um, Makes it a little bit challenging sometimes.
yeah, yeah. I know that's that nobody. Unfortunately, they've never had a van ride to Guelph, Canada, you know, or a volleyball trip, you know.
Yeah, the old van ride to Penn State with volleyball,
Yeah,
playing hearts with Shondell.
yeah. I mean, just that. I mean, there is. I think there's something to be said. We talk a lot about clinical experience, but in a lot of those ways, we learned how to communicate and um, interact with
Yeah,
people that were older than ourselves or maybe in higher level positions, um, which again I don't think the students have an opportunity to
right.
have those experiences
And even the athletes themselves, Troy, I think,
yeah,
interacting with them and spending time with them in those, extended trips and situations like that, where you can just relate and interact in ways instead of just being the guy that's there if they get hurt type thing.
yeah,
Um, you know, One thing I always say, I use this example all the time, and over the years, and I got to credit Ralph Reef, who I worked for several years, and I consider one of my mentors as well. Um, he one time said to me, he goes, there's an art and a science to athletic training. And the science, I think, is as strong as it's ever been. Like I said, I think a lot of these kids coming out now, their skill set as far as what they're learning is way above what I feel we had when we came out, you know,
Right.
a couple years ago. Um, but but what's missing is the art, and the in my opinion, the art is exactly what you were just talking about, the learning how to communicate, learning how to interact, learning how to just be able to apply what you know in a way that makes the athlete comfortable, that you can communicate it to the coach or the parent or whoever you're dealing with. I think those are the skills that are lacking a little bit, and a lot of that comes with experience, obviously. But like I said, I just think that's a great way of looking at it, and something that I always kind of keep in the back of my mind is, you know, the science may be strong, they may know every eval and every test and be able to execute them perfectly, but if you can't relate to the athlete or communicate to coaches and parents and physicians, it's going to make it pretty challenging to be successful.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I think it's not exclusive to athletic training. I mean, um, uh, just in the past couple of years where you have a transition of physicians and stuff, and people that you would work with for a long time and they retire and there's new physicians that come in. Um, it's not, I mean, it's kind of the same situation, with that. And, um, it's interesting. I have a newly minted, orthopedic surgeon at Hancock that just, they said, you have to go to Eastern. They just sent him out there. And he's actually cool because he was in the working world for a while, and his people skills are way advanced for a lot of new docs that are coming out of their residency, or their fellowship. And I've kind of talked to him a little bit about that, and he goes, well, I had to recruit kids to play soccer. you know I knew how to interact with people and stuff. And he goes, I
Yeah,
just try now that translate that to my medical practice. And I said, you're at an advantage, in some ways, because
right.
some of these younger doctors just want to like spout statistics and here you go, and this is why you should do this, and instead of like putting their hand on your knee and say, hey, if you were my kid, this is what I would do. And that goes a long way in patient care and stuff too. So it's not exclusive to athlete training, but in any medical profession, trying to,
Right.
like you said, learn that art of how to deal with people and read the room of like, who do you have over here? You have a hysterical mom that's freaking out because she thinks that her son's or daughter's athletic career is completely over, and a coach that's like, hey, I think they're going to be okay to play next week, and how you balance that out, um, in doing. Hold on a minute. Okay, how you balance that out with of kind of seeing which each situation needs to know, and having that calming, reassuring, hey, everybody's going to be okay here. All right, this is how we're going to do X, Y, and Z with that, and um, it does take a little while to learn.
Yep.
So at Ball State, do you remember the sports that you worked at Ball State?
Um, well, I said basketball was my first official sport that I worked, my sophomore year. Um, that kind of took up, I think I started with football, if I remember correctly, coming back my sophomore year, and then as soon as basketball season kind of got going, made this transition. So I wasn't like officially with football. I just kind of helped out, and then worked with basketball. I honestly don't remember what I had that spring. Um, I want to say it was just spring football, but I could be wrong. Um, and then my junior year, I know I worked, track, women's track, indoor and outdoor track. Um, I didn't get is I didn't get the necessarily the opportunity to work football per se, because um, the summer after my sophomore year and after my junior year, I was fortunate enough to be able to intern with the Colts, and so
Yeah.
I didn't get to work Ball State football because I obviously missed all of summer camp and stuff,
Right.
working training camp. Um, but kind of came back and dabbled and helped and was like the host trainer a few times and um, stuff like that. Um, and then my senior year was men's volleyball was my big sport. Um, and that was, kind of circling back around, that was the cool. I mean, I guess with track, I guess track was really the first sport that I traveled with solo. Um, I remember the big trip was down to Auburn, I think, for some Auburn relays or something. I can't remember what it was called.
Right.
Um, so I think that was probably my first solo road trip of any significance. I think we did some indoor stuff up at Purdue or some other places, but that was my first big trip. Um, went on some trips with basketball, but obviously wasn't solo. So yeah, women's track I think was my first opportunity with that, and then really when it kind of all came together was senior year traveling and being the AT with men's volleyball, and being able to take some extended trips with them. We went up to to Guelph,
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do that or not, but it was always around Thanksgiving time. We actually spent Thanksgiving up in Guelph, um, at a tournament up there. That was the first one that I remember with volleyball. And then kind of the highlight is always the spring break trip going
Right.
with them out west and playing, out in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of you certainly got your fair share of characters, um, working men's basketball and then going, with and there was a few characters on the women's track team, but definitely men's volleyball at that point in time. There was a cast of characters on that team
Yeah.
I'm sure gave you some unique challenges. Also, a couple things.
Yeah, for sure. Um, you know, so you mentioned earlier it was kind of like the golden era. Obviously I think we're biased because that was the era that we were there.
Yeah.
Um, so of course it was the best era, but it from athletically, that year that basketball season, that was the season, that was the Sweet 16 season.
Right.
And you know, just the being around that. I mean, obviously as a sophomore student athletic trainer, you're what you actually contributed was pretty small in the big picture of things, but just to be a part of it and associated with those guys and getting to know, the Paris McCurdy's and Curtis Kidd and
Right.
Chandler Thompson and, Sean Parrish, who, to this day is a good friend of mine and
Right.
work with quite a bit. Um, so yeah, stuff like that. And those, those were definitely some characters. Um, volleyball, yeah, volleyball was another set of characters as well, as well. But and
And you got to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were paired up with Rod Stanford, correct?
with
Is that
basketball, yeah,
Yeah, with basketball. So not only did you have all these basketball characters, but then you had Rod.
we had the ultimate character.
And probably one of the greatest, nobody talks about, because it's a lengthy prank, but the greatest pranks of all time. Everybody talks about, Jones saran wrapping Plum's truck, but your and Rod's prank with Tony was with the van in Irving Gym, going down the ramp and Dave freaking out, was to me one of the all-time greatest Plum pranks ever. Because
Yeah, that was I had honestly forgotten about that, to be completely honest with you, but that's
I mean, I
yeah,
mean, I mean, he took out a guard gate, driving out of the parking lot. and
Yeah, he was a little frustrated. If I kind of probably should have felt a little bad, but it was so funny that yeah.
yeah, no, it was. Well, the thing is that small background. From correct me if and correct me at any point in time here, but they had to take laundry from Irving Gym because the laundry room was gone, and
Right.
we're building the
Yeah,
arena.
we're in the transition from Irving Gym to
Yeah,
University Gym.
yeah. And so Plum had to go take the laundry to the football stadium, which he probably hated anyway,
Right.
because he had to go out there and mess with Texas stuff, and Tex probably wasn't happy about that either. But yeah, there's a little ramp, and you guys perpetuated the van was unstable and going to roll down on the basketball floor, and Dave freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good, yeah, he freaked out. We'll just
Uh,
leave it at that.
yeah, let's leave it at that. That's fine. Anyway, well, that's the thing is that I think we look at our experiences, clinical experiences, as we're learning um, and trying to just trying to say, hey, yes, I learned a lot with that, and just like we talked about, we learned the art, especially with Rex and Tony and Neil, and I'll even throw Vicky in there a little bit too. But we learned some of this stuff. I know, but we learned something from somebody all the time.
Actually, yeah, I did learn some stuff from her. I gotta admit, I learned,
Yeah, yeah.
well,
You
we'll
can
just leave it at
admit
that.
that. Yeah, let's leave it at that. But the thing is that it was a great experience. So let's talk a little bit about your internship with the Colts, because again, to me, the NFL was definitely a lot of art in as much as science, and there was a lot of science in that time, but there was some great art in there, that even some stuff that like uh I've got some Ictamol and some stuff that Otho used for an ankle sprain, sitting in my office right now. Because I had a senior kid that we had to get back, and I was going to be prepared to do stuff if I had to get him back. And fortunately, we didn't have to do any of that stuff, but it's there and I can use it. But there was a ton of stuff that um, you would look at it and go, I don't know about that. And my gosh, it would work. And you just kind of scratch your head, but and you
Yeah,
get people playing again. So
yeah,
talk a little bit about your
absolutely.
Colts internships and kind of what kind of contributed to your career at that point.
Yeah, like I said, this was going in the summer before my junior year. So it was a little bit of a surprise, to be honest with you, but kind of at the right place at the right time situation where they had somebody that was um, had to leave early for, I can't remember what the story was, but basically they had their summer staff and somebody had to cut out early. And um, basically Hunter Smith, the head AT at the time with the Colts, called Rex, and Rex called me, and of course I was like, heck yeah,
Yeah,
whatever. I don't remember what my summer job was that summer, but it surely was not gonna keep me from doing this. Um, so I get down there, and Lito was one of the the summer interns already, and had done it the previous year. So he was kind of um, showing me the ropes it was good to have him there, as especially coming in, kind of not not being involved with it from the beginning. Kind of
right.
who's this new guy coming in all of a sudden? At least I knew I had
You
Lito there
right.
to kind of help me with that. So, um, but yeah, I mean, great experience. Obviously, it was at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. Like I said earlier, football's always been my passion. So it was like to have this opportunity, um, way different than what I had envisioned. And I think as most people do, you think of the fun stuff or the bright lights of, game day.
Yeah.
You don't see all the stuff behind the scenes and all the work, literally during training camp. Now we're talking, it's funny because now training camp's up at Grand Park in Westfield where I live. And I've my son and I have gone to a couple practices the last few years, and it's just how it is now. And this is going to totally sound like the old get off my lawn guy, but how it is now compared to how it was 30 years ago is it's night and day.
Yeah.
We had you had the head trainer and the assistant trainer, and then during training camp you had a bunch of interns, and we did like 2 a day full pad practices. Right. And you're working by the time you get there for early man to get everything set up and get the whirlpools filled and all that stuff, to the time you leave. I mean, you're working consistently 18 plus hour days. Right. For days at a time, but you're also like 19, 20 years old, and you can do that without any problem.
Right. And still find time to go out for a couple hours at night.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially on the road trips, that you take that per diem that you got for meals, because the docs would always take you out for dinner.
Yeah.
And then you do evening treatments, do whatever you needed to do, and then as Hunter, one of Hunter's favorite sayings is, if you're gonna hoot with the Owls, you better be able to soar with the Eagles. So as long as you were able to soar with the Eagles the next morning, you could hoot all you wanted the night before. So yeah, those were some good times. I will say I will never forget my first official road trip with them was a preseason game out in Seattle, and we get done playing, and it's just, again, I don't know how it is nowadays, but like back when I was involved with it, like the plane would you basically had about 45 minutes from the end of the game to get the heck out on the bus to head to the airport. And you're packing everything up, and you're dealing with anything that happened during the game injury wise, and getting, back then, as bad as the turf was, it was usually patching up a bunch of turf burns before we got on the plane, and etc. Whatever it is, but we play the game, get everything, get on the plane, fly back to Indy. This was, training camp was in Anderson at that time.
Right.
You get back to Anderson, unload everything, and then you're walking back to the dorm, and literally the sun's coming up, and I was just like, wow. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, be back at 7 a.m. to get ready for treatments. And so you get like about a maybe a 3-hour nap, maybe. And it was just like, wow, that's the side that people don't see. They're like, oh, it's cool, you worked with the Colts. And I'm like, it was cool, but it was also, as with having similar experience with the Eagles, that's a lot of hours.
Yeah. I remember, I forget where we were coming back from, but it was like the week after training camp, and those guys in previous years had like a hole with some mattresses in it and underneath the vet, and they would just stay in there. And the fire marshal came through like the year that I went out there, and they said you can't do that anymore because there's only one way in and one way out. And so we had a really nice Hilton over in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, but we all knew that we had to be back, and we didn't want to drive over there, so we just all like grabbed some blankets and we all slept on the treatment tables. And I remember Dave Price coming in going, "Must have been a long night, huh?" And he was just messing with us. He like, "Nope, we just didn't want to miss. We want to make sure we were back here in time to do all that and get a couple, maybe 30 minutes of extra sleep to do that." And we just like got up and put a different shirt on and got to work, and so it was just, that's just what you did. I mean, and so seeing the sun come up, knowing that you had to be back in like 3 hours and
right.
stuff. I mean, nobody complained about it. You grunted, but you were just happy to be working in the NFL.
Right. Oh yeah. Cause I remember talking about it. Like, we'd sit down there. Hunter called them greasers, the heel and lace pads. And we would make the greasers every night, like while the teams, like after dinner, while the teams were in meetings before they came in for evening treatments, all the interns would sit around every night during training camp and just make cases and cases of
Yeah.
these things because they basically used them. We made enough during training camp so that they had enough to go through the whole season, so they didn't mess with it, having to
Right.
do it themselves. And we'd be sitting down there making greasers. And I remember talking, one of the guys figured out like how much we were actually making per hour, and it was like, pennies on the dollar. I don't remember what it was. It was something crazy, like 28 cents an hour or something like
Yeah.
that. And but we were like, you know what? There's like 100 other dudes that would take this spot in a second. And
Yeah.
so, but like you said, you didn't complain about it. You just did it because you were fortunate to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think that's the thing is that nowadays, with all the processes of applying through PFATs and all this other stuff, I mean, I'm assuming that's from what I see, that's how you get an internship now. Um, uh, it, it's kind of, it's maybe it's fair. I don't know. But uh, the glitz and the
Yeah,
glamour, everybody gets to do it,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I understand what they're doing, and it's like, you know, it was like I said, it was for me, it was the start. The initial opportunity was just right place at the right time. I was
Right.
close by. I had an interest. They had a connection with Ball State and with Rex, so somebody that's working in, somewhere other than an NFL city may not have those types of opportunities or those connections. So I
Right.
get what they're doing, but there's also, it's the whole art and science thing again. You know, just because you know how to do it doesn't mean necessarily that you're the right person to do it because you haven't developed those other skills needed to go along with it. So
Yeah.
um, I don't know. Plus, again, I'm extremely biased. I'll admit it, but I think personally, I think football is a little bit of a different mindset to work compared to other sports. Um, the injuries, sprained ankle is a sprained ankle, whether you're dealing with a football athlete or basketball, soccer, whatever. But I think and I guess you could probably say this for every sport, has their own nuances and their own kind of culture. But I think it's easier to transition to cover other sports after being involved with football than the other way around, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's easier to go to work with basketball or soccer or baseball or whatever after being involved with football than to, if all of your experience has always been with baseball, to come in and work football is, it's a different mindset. That's my own opinion. I've had
Uh,
conversations like that with people over the years, and like I said, I know I'm biased because I'm a football geek,
yeah.
but anyway.
No, I think you're right in the aspect of it. There's just a lot more uh, plates in the air with football. There,
Yeah.
you can have 15 guys in basketball, but not all 15 guys at. I mean, it's proportional, at least in my opinion. You may have two or three guys that have some ongoing issues. With football, you could have 11, 12, 13, 14. If you're really unfortunate, which like at St. Joe's I was, you had 20 guys on the injury report. I mean, and that's half your football team. Um,
Right.
and out of those 20 guys, maybe 8 of them can't practice, and your mind has to be like moving in a direction of like, okay, so I've got this group, I've got this group. It's not a like um it's not like track. Track is like all over the place. Like there's different groups in track, obviously different events and stuff. And each individual group has their issues or problems or something. Football is like one team, but each group, you have to have like you may only have 3 linebackers and the rest of them are hurt, or you're trying to figure out, or that the first 3 linebackers that you have are really good and you got to figure out a way to keep them playing because the last 3 or the last 4, you're going to drop off pretty quickly. And I think that's the physical talent disparage too. And I'm even seeing that in high school football, like between our JV guys and our varsity guys. We have a pretty decent JV team, but physically they're not the same as the varsity guys. So you have to, like, I've had to figure out, like, okay, this is how we're going to do this safely, so you can practice, so you can play on Friday, because the guy behind you is not ready for varsity.
Not ready.
You know,
Right.
it is. You have, your mindset is just like, if it's a basketball guy that's behind that, oh, that guy, well, he's just not going to shoot. You know, if he plays, he can guard people, he can do stuff. He's just not going to shoot. We got a score here that can do that, and you'll treat them and get them better and move on. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a different mentality in the aspect of how you manage things for football players, because it is such a different entity to deal with. So,
yeah.
All right. So you're on from the Colts. You're graduating from Ball State. Were you considering? What were you considering at the time? Because probably you had your options for GA positions, jobs.
Yeah. It was there was a lot of options. Well, my initial, once I initially graduated, I already had something. I mean, I was going back to the Colts for one more go, because they hired, at the time they would hire what was called a 6-month assistant, where you were full-time assistant from like whatever June 1st till whenever the end of the season was. So I already had that lined up. So I knew after graduating I was gonna go back for another season with the Colts. But it was after that I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do. I know what I wanted. I was hoping, because there had been some rumors about, they were going to expand the medical staff. Because, like I said, it was literally during the season, it was the head trainer, the assistant trainer, and the 6-month guy, the 6-month assistant, and that's all there was. And obviously the physicians, but so they were talking about expanding and bringing on more medical staff. And so that's what I was hoping, was that could just roll over and they would just keep me full time. Obviously didn't work out. I know you know Dave Walston, Wally. He's helped up at Ball State recently. That was the guy that they hired, and I was like, I didn't know him, and I was like, I hated him. I'm like, I don't know who he is, but for the longest time, I was like, oh, I just hear his name and it would make me. And it was like, I'll never forget Hunter. It was actually during the combine. We were getting, it was like, I don't know, in between. It was just like a random time. He came up to me. I was covering the field at the combine at the end of that season, and Hunter came up to me and he wanted to let me know that they had got a second assistant AT position approved. And I went from like, here we go, to like just crashing, because he told me that he was bringing in Walston, and that he just had more experience and more rehab experience, gave me all the reasons, blah, 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 blah. So that was kind of a crushing blow, because that was like, I thought I had a shot at that. So obviously that didn't work out. And so I didn't know for sure what I was going to do. I did interview for some GA positions. I was like this close to taking a GA position at University of Michigan. That was 1 year with football, 1 year with wrestling. I remember that specifically. But I've been fortunate to get through undergrad without any student loans and any debt, any loan debt, put it that way. I think I still have some debt at the Chug or something, but
didn't we all? Unless it was like penny beer night and we could drink like crazy for $1, I mean.
Yeah. but long story short, I didn't take it primarily just out of stubbornness because they weren't really working with me too much on the stipend versus out of state tuition it, and I was like, I'm not going to go into big debt for just 2 years of school.
Right.
So that didn't work out. Um, I looked at the one of the very probably the only time that I can think of off the top of my head. I didn't do something that Rex suggested that I do, kind of suggested slash told. Um, he basically told me, I'll never forget this. He goes, "There's the head trainer, or maybe it was, I don't know if it was head, but there was a position open with Wabash College, and he was like, you there's a position at Wabash you need to take it or something like that."
Yeah.
And I didn't really have at that point any interest. I was still kind of holding on, thinking I could get into the NFL somehow.
Yeah.
And then I actually ended up for a few months with just kind of moved back to Muncie after the thing with the Colts was done. I moved back to Muncie and was working at a PT slash sports medicine-ish type clinic. It was actually a Health South clinic.
Yeah. Bill Hitchcock.
With
Was
Chris Robinson was working there.
Okay.
And so I worked there for a little bit. And then, I didn't really know what I was going to do, quite honestly. And then somebody was talking about high school. I can't remember who it was, but somebody that I had graduated with was talking about they were working at the high school setting and loved it. And so I kind of looked into that. I had never really honestly thought about working at the high school setting. And then I ended up getting a job up in Michigan at a clinic up there, a hospital system actually, that was just starting an outreach program. They had like one high school. They had a couple more that they were kind of dabbling with. And so I was like, well, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. And then surprised at how much I enjoyed working with high school kids. Like I said, in my mind, it was NFL or major, like a D, Power Five type football program. That was my goal, what I had in my head. And then I started working with these high school kids, and it was like, this is actually, it kind of refreshed you in the fact that you've been working, at least, I've been working with NFL and pro guys and the business part of it and all that, but to kind of get back to the grassroots of helping people and the appreciation that the parents had and the coaches and, the kids, helping them understand, like you said earlier, you're gonna be okay. This isn't the end of the world. And so just kind of really connected. And maybe I have a high school mentality. Some people will tell you that. But just kind of connected with that setting, and pretty much for the most part been in that type of setting ever since, to some extent.
Yeah. No, I think that I've learned that people are people wherever you're at, and if they need your help, you're going to help them, and you have that skill set to do that, and you're right. I mean, I think my situation, what I tell people is that I went from expectation to appreciation, and that's all I needed to see was that I needed that. I needed to feel that too. And so
Yeah.
it's so crazy how much, you do the most simple things. I remember Ryan Goy telling me, he goes, you're going to do the most basic thing that you did at the college level, and they'll think it's the most amazing thing. And you probably did the same thing too when you were at that first job. Was, you'd just been in the NFL and had all those experiences and stuff, and you probably did your most basic thing, and they thought it was like, oh my gosh, I can play again because you take me this way. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And,
No, that's something that it's funny you say that, because I talk to some people about this all the time, and I don't want to steer the conversation. I don't know what direction we're going after this, but I've been fortunate to have some pretty good experiences with USA football, and working with having the chance to work with primarily, at least initially, it was primarily high school age kids, and but kids from literally all over the country, and that has been one of the most rewarding things to me personally as an athletic trainer, of working with these kids. And like you just said, you just do something simple, like in my mind is simple, or in our mind I should say is simple.
Yeah.
It's not like I did some crazy new technique that nobody else knows. You
Right.
just do simple things to help them, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this feels awesome. Like, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
And how come my trainer doesn't do that, and stuff like that. And it's just like, those are the things that at the end of the day, you can complain about whatever you want to complain about, the hours, the temperature, the pay, whatever it is. But to me personally, that's why we do what we do, is to see that look on those kids' faces of, wow, that's like awesome. And to be able to get out there and perform at the level that they want to, they're able to perform at, just because of something that you did to help them get there.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I did want to kind of talk about your experiences with USA football. So let's talk about how, like, you're obviously in Michigan for a little while, then you're going to make your way back down to Indianapolis and stuff. So do you get this USA football kind of connection when you start working for St. Vincent's? Is that how this all starts then?
Yeah, that's exactly how it all started. Again, kind of right place at the right time situation. Um, USA Football moved. They were originally, had their headquarters out in the DC area, um, and had moved they wanted to move to Indy to kind of be more connected with some of the other NGBs.
Right.
Gymnastics and swimming and diving, track and field are all based in Indy. Um, so they moved their headquarters to Indy to kind of get into that circle. And at the time, St. Vincent had connections with all of those other NGBs, and so when they moved into town, um, it was just kind of a natural connection there. And Ralph basically came up to me and asked me if I'd be interested in kind of being the point person for this partnership. And I'll be honest, I'd never heard of him. Like, and I consider myself, like I said, I'm like a football nerd. And I'd never heard of USA football. I didn't know anything about them. And so yeah, they came into town, and I kind of, through Ralph, became like the I don't know what you want to call it, the head trainer of sorts,
Right.
for USA football, and learned more about what they were doing. And they're just like, it's like everything else. They're just like USA basketball or USA soccer, but the difference being, um, well, to this point at least, and it may change very soon. Football's not an Olympic sport, so they were kind of like the stepchild of, in my opinion, this is strictly my opinion. USA football has always been kind of the stepchild of the NGBs, because they're not an Olympic sport. And so, um, a lot of people didn't even, like myself, didn't even realize that there was a USA football. Um, but to be able to kind of see them grow, they've grown a ton over that. So that was in 2010, 2011, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
My first big trip with them, I remember, was in 2011. That was my first overseas trip with USA football, was in 2011. So they've grown a ton since then, and they've also kind of changed gears a little bit. They still do a lot of kind of their grassroots, so to speak, is youth leagues and rec leagues, and trying to educate and train coaches on how to coach and how to run practices with youth and youth age level kids. Obviously the whole shift in the paradigm shift with concussions and how those are been managed over the last several decade, I guess, probably. Um, So they've been super involved in all that education and training of coaches and trying to change the game from that regard. Um, and then probably more recently, they've shifted gears a little bit and really have put a lot of emphasis on their flag football teams.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where I think it's next week, the IOC votes. I know the Los Angeles committee, the LA 28 Olympics,
Yeah.
um, they put out the 5 sports that they are recommending that get added to LA, and flag football was one of them.
Yeah.
And then the official IOC, it's my understanding that the IOC vote is sometime next week. And if it gets approved, then flag football will be in the 28 Olympics out in LA. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
we'll we'll see.
And this is, again, I think it's interesting that you had these in your younger days, you had these dreams of the NFL and having a career in the NFL and stuff, and so that doesn't happen. But you come back some years later, and you get asked to kind of oversee the healthcare for USA Football, which now affords you to travel all over the world, which you may not have had the opportunity with the NFL to do that. And now you potentially could be at the LA Olympics, um, doing that. I mean, I'm going to say this. I mean, it is a very Dick Hooverish type of experience that you've had. If you look back on it a little bit, I mean, Dick was always involved with the college all-star games and Chicago sports in general. If you listen to a little bit of the Mark File podcast, he'll talk a little bit about that. But you have had this experience where, like, where exactly have you been due to USA Football?
Yeah, I've been in some places I never would have ever dreamed that I would be, period, much less being there working as an athletic trainer. Um, my first trip with USA Football, and probably still my favorite one, if it's definitely one of the top 2 or 3, was with the men's team. So they have a men's team it's kind of like the World Cup, so to speak,
Yeah.
to try to give it some comparison, that they have a world championship. So there's an International Federation of American Football. So it's IFAF. And believe it or not, there's literally, I don't know what the latest number is, but I know it's over 70 countries that have organized football of some sort across the world, which blew my mind. I was like, 70? Like, you know, my simple mind, I don't even know if I can name 70 countries total.
Yeah.
So IFAF kind of, they're the international federation, and they are the governing body of, like, all the NGBs obviously, like, report up to them. And they run these tournaments, and there's a world championship for men's football, tackle football, that's held every 4 years. And so 2011 was held in Austria. And so that was just part of it, I think, because it was new and it was the first time, and part of it was just the setting. Austria was amazing.
Yeah.
We were in Innsbruck. I'll never forget this. So Innsbruck is where the downhill, or not downhill, but the
ski jump.
ski jump. Thank you.
Yeah, from World Sports. Yeah.
Yeah, their training center is in Innsbruck. And so we took a tour of that, and just to stand up at the top of that thing, and, like, those guys are nuts, man. Because this was during summer, so there wasn't any snow, but to see just that track that they go,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a whole nother story. But so Austria, we were in Innsbruck, and then championship game was played in Vienna. So let's see. So was in there. I think probably the next big trip I went on was in Kuwait. We went to Kuwait City,
Wow.
and played there, which was very surreal. Um, it was well after all of, Desert Storm and all that, but
Still,
um,
I mean, you're
it's
there.
still one of the coolest things that the other part of it too is it's always, the perks, right? When we were in Austria, we got to have like a cookout at the U.S. Embassy in Vienna, and saw the room apparently that like JFK and some Russian guy met during the Cuban
Right.
Missile Crisis and stuff like just stuff like that. That
Yeah.
like how am I like how did that happen? How did I get a chance to see that? Um,
No,
you
I
know,
get that
uh,
feeling. You're like,
yeah,
how did I get here? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like I said, I kind of just shake my head. I'm like, I don't know how I've been to all these places. Kuwait, we were able to go out and visit a military base out there. That was literally like, um, I don't know how many. It wasn't very many. It wasn't very far from Iraq, and we're going down. We had to like get on a bus, and then we had to get on this other bus. It was like very like secret of where this place is. And at one point, the bus driver, he was a um, you know, uh, it wasn't just like Max the bus driver. I mean, he was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anyway, he said, he goes, for those of you that are old enough, he goes, if you think about the video of the war and you see the tanks going down like this big highway, he goes, that's the highway that we're on right now.
Oh
And
wow.
that was just like, whoa, that
Yeah, because
is,
we were all in college then. I mean, we're all
yeah,
watching this on CNN and stuff like that as this going on because we didn't know what it held for us,
exactly.
that. And so, yeah,
So,
holy crap.
so yeah, so that was really surreal. And then being able to just be there with the troops out there, we ended up having dinner with them out there. That was kind of spur of the moment. Um, coach was like, we're good. We don't, because we were supposed to get back in that practice, but the guys were like, they wanted us to eat with them, and it happened to be barbecue night, and we'd been in Kuwait for like I don't know how long at this point. And we're like, some American barbecue sounds pretty darn good right now. So,
Yeah.
um, so Kuwait was one. You know, we went to China, and played
Wow.
at this place called Harbin, China. Never heard of it. It was not probably one of the better trips.
Right.
It was there was some challenges, just from where we were staying and the food, and it wasn't ideal, but it was still, you know, definitely some great takeaways from there.
Yeah.
Um, then obviously we've been to Mexico, played Mexico City, been a couple places in Canada, Panama was cool. Got to see the Panama Canal
Oh wow.
and tour that, and just amazing to see those ships go through that thing was,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, something. So, um, Israel, I guess that was probably the last big trip was Israel.
Yeah.
Um, and that was especially, um, all the stuff that they're going through now,
Right.
and just to, just whatever, just
You kind of know where
the
some of that stuff
concept,
is at, right? I mean,
right,
you,
of of obviously the history, and not to get off on I don't want to turn
yeah.
this into it, whatever, but just that one, and that was a late one too, like late in the year. It was literally the first week in December. So just being there that close to Christmas,
Yeah.
it was really had an impact on a lot of us when we were over there. And
Yes.
so, I mean, I know that's not athletic training specific, but
No, no.
that's
I think the thing is that's why I brought it up is that you and I are kind of similar in our average growing up backgrounds and where we were at and stuff. I mean, that's where I remember standing in Wembley Stadium with the Eagles, going, "I'm just a dumb farm kid from Indiana. How the hell did I get here?" You know, I'm in Wembley Stadium in London, England, with an NFL team, and how the hell did I get here? And I think that's normal, but I think that's the thing about it. And when you create your own opportunities, in some ways, those opportunities allow you to do some things that you would never dream of doing. And I think that's the thing of being in those places and having those experiences. And at the point in time you're doing it, you're just working, right? I mean, you're just doing your job. And then you have those surreal moments where you're standing around going, like you said, how the hell did I get here? Because I don't know what, why was it I the one that got to fall in this position and stuff to do that? So that's really why I wanted to talk about it now. I mean, yeah, we can talk about starting off with St. Vincent Sports Performance. Now you work for Franciscan Sports Medicine, and those are all interesting things. But your football experience is really kind of what a lot of people may not know about you, even though you're still out on social media talking about it and stuff. But it's the kind of unique thing that if they understood the magnitude of what you're doing with USA football, it's a big deal. And I don't know if you've thought about that or not, but it is. I mean, and that's the thing about it is that it's a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Troy. It's like you said, I feel like, I've been fortunate to be in my eyes. I feel like I've been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time on some things. The whole thing with the Colts, the thing even with USA football, just you know, I hope anyway, some of the things that I've done by my actions have allowed me to have some of those opportunities. But at the same time, it's all because of the connections that you make and people. And that's, when talking to, you go talk to career days and stuff, or even to like the master's program kids, it's like you network.
Right.
Because athletic training, I mean, it's a pretty small circle when you think about it. And so you never know when someone that you meet will be able to be a reference or a connection for you for something that you haven't even thought of. Like I said, I sure never thought I would be in China of all places working as an athletic trainer, or really any of those places that I named off. But you
And not
just
only
never.
that, not only that, but I mean, you have to look out on a college football Saturday and go, oh yeah, they're doing pretty well today. Really enjoy
Yeah,
watching that. Or you see the highlight reel and you're like, yep, I saw that kid do that way back when. I
yeah,
mean, just the connections, coaches. I mean,
definitely.
the
Yeah, and there's like that whole network. There's a ton of coaches across the country, um, that I know and I've worked with, and several that I'm pretty good friends with now. Um, to your point, you see kids that you may have seen them, maybe even all the way down to like the U16 kid or something, and now they're
yeah,
playing.
yeah,
And there's more than a few of them that are playing on Sundays too.
yeah,
Um, and so it's just cool to just know that nobody else knows or necessarily cares, but you had at least a little teeny tiny
yeah.
part of their experience, to help them get to where they're at. It just makes you feel good you know, as a person and as an athletic trainer. At least it does for me anyway. And
Yeah.
it's not something you go around and broadcast and be like, oh, hey, I worked with that kid and I know that kid and I know that
Right,
coach.
right.
But that's not what it's all about. I've never, yeah, those guys bug me. Name droppers are, that's not what we're in this for.
Right.
Um, but it's just the personal satisfaction of being able to help those at the time kids, and see how they've been able to continue to grow and develop and allow them to do what they're doing now on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hate to say this, as long as you've been doing this, I mean, you're starting to see kids now that are probably getting back into the coaching ranks that are I not to date you. I mean, I'm in the same boat too, but I mean, I remember the first time Josh Thompson hopped up on my table at Ball State, and I went, "Holy crap, I'm getting old because this is." I mean, I was taping Chandler's ankles, and now I'm taping Josh's ankles. Holy crap,
Yeah,
But you're starting to see some of those kids that were in there when you started out coming through, in those coaching ranks and having those connections as well. And they see
Yeah,
a familiar face in you that like, yeah, Dave's still doing this and
right.
this is cool. So
Yeah, for sure. It's always crazy to me, or that, or you're like out at Lowe's or Kroger or something, and someone comes up and they're like, "Hey, Trainer Dave," and I'm like, "Hey," I'm like, "I kind of remember you look familiar, but I don't really remember who you are." And then or it's like, "Oh yeah, he's the shoulder guy," or she's the knee girl, and but
right.
can't really always remember all the details.
It's
So,
yeah, as long
but
as
it,
we've been
it
doing this, I mean, it's just it's you start thinking about the amount of people that you've taken care of over the years, and you start going, "Holy smokes!" No wonder I
yeah.
can't remember everybody because it's a
Yeah.
lot of people. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. There's a quote, I've seen it bounce around social media several times. And I can't remember exactly what it says, but basically it was like a coach will have more impact, or will impact more kids um, during their career than, whatever. I can't remember. I'm totally butchering it. But
yeah.
basically it was just, the gist is the impact that you have on kids and being able to work with them. And you never know. I mean, um, and this, I'll say this because this is a Ball State connection. Um, some of the people listening may know Jason Hines. Um, he was so Sheridan was officially my first high school that I worked with when I moved back to the Indy area,
Yeah.
and they had never really had like full-time AT before, and that could be a whole nother podcast just talking about Sheridan, um,
I know. I know.
but
I mean, I grew up just west of there, so I know that whole deal.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so Jason he was on the football team at Sheridan. Wasn't really, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or embarrass him. I hope that he doesn't take it that way. But Sheridan was pretty, they're historically pretty good at football. And Jason didn't necessarily see a lot of playing time. Um, but he was just one of those kids. He was always there, and he was one of those kids that was like, if his physical size was as big as his heart, he would be he'd be playing on Sundays.
Yeah.
Um, but the impact that you have on kids. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But so, like at the Ring of Honor thing, he came up and congratulated me and gave me a hug and stuff, and was just like, told me, and I honestly didn't really know this until that night, that I was like a major influence on him of why he got into athletic training, and he thanked me for that. And I'm like thinking back, and I was like, man, I don't recall ever doing really anything for Jason.
Yeah.
Um, I must have done something at some point, but
Right.
those are the types of things. That's like the whole nother aspect of this profession, that, not only the physical, the medical part of helping them get back to return to their activity, but just the impact that you have on some of these kids, that they'll track you down at a Lowe's, some kid that graduated like 10-15 years ago,
Right.
or a story like Jason's, that at least I never really think about that. But then when you do kind of take a step back, and to your point, the amount of lives that we are able to touch, at various levels of impact, it's really kind of mind blowing.
It is mind
And
blowing. Yes.
especially as we get older, because it multiplies every year.
Yeah. No, it is mind blowing, and you're not tooting your own horn with that. It's just you are with people at their most vulnerable moments a lot of times, and whether it's one day, or 6 weeks, or 3 months, or a year, um, you still make connections with those people, just like as if you were sometimes a part of your family. And um, it is funny how you have kids. I say kids, but we'll say kids for the sake of saying that, but that uh, you stay in contact with, or they stay in contact with you, or they give you updates, or when they come back for homecomings or whatever, they run into you wherever.
Right.
That you're like, oh yeah, I remember that, and social media has Facebook and stuff is a great equalizer with that stuff, and I got to reconnect with a couple of gymnasts at Utah. One of them is the head coach at Ohio State, and another one, her daughter's a gymnast at Kent State, and we were at a meet together last year, and we just spent. I don't remember seeing half the meet because I was just kind of reconnecting with Kelly a little bit, and then after the meet, going out to dinner with Meredith, and um, just I didn't think that what I did for them was that big of a deal, but it was to them, and now they have their kids, and they kind of said, like, hey, you want to take a look at my kid? And I'm like, no, they have an athlete trainer to do things. Go see them; they'll be fine. Yeah, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
That's about how many phone calls do you think you've gotten over the years from friends, neighbors, friends of friends? Hey, so and so said to call Troy because you could help. Like that. Yeah.
that that
Especially
that
when you've been
happened.
in the same area for a while.
Yeah, so that started happening this year with my kids playing sports. Um, it's particularly cross country, because middle school cross country, really, Blue River Small School doesn't really have anybody out there. And I was like looking at kids underneath this oak tree, laying down on the ground and doing stuff with them. And then
Yeah.
we were at Northeastern, and I had some parent come up to me, and it was my only time that I got. Dan Lucan, of all people, because Dan's kind of my boss now, and I said, hey Dan, can you cover this JV football game, because Sam was running a cross country meet at Northeastern, and then right after that, Carolyn was playing a volleyball game. And I had this parent come up to me right after the cross country meet and said, hey, can you take a look at my daughter? And I said, I would love to, but I want to go see my daughter play volleyball. And he's like, I get it. All right. And I said, you can go to Henry County, you can go over CIO, you can go wherever you want to go and get her checked out. But any other time, I'd be more than happy to do that. But that's the other thing. I've kind of learned to say no to some of those
Yeah.
things, because I've got my own interests in kids and doing that stuff too. And that's kind of had to be a learned behavior to say no. Because used to, I'm just saying, oh yeah, let me check you out and stuff, because I have higher priorities
Right.
with my own kids now. But that's
Yeah.
not happened a whole lot until this year. And even Carolyn's like, her friends come over, and she's like, Dad, so and so's got some back pain. Can you take a look at them? I'm like, okay, fine. Let's go take a look at this. Or now I get, hey Dad, can you bring the Normatec boots home? Because I know because Eastern, because I got Eastern to buy some Normatec boots. And
Yeah.
so they know that I have the Normatec boots, and they're like, can you bring those home? Nobody's really using them over there when we're at home. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll sneak those home for you. Yeah. So, yeah. But
Yeah.
um so we're getting kind of, I told you an hour and a half. We're pretty much right on the schedule with that. But um anything that if you were given some advice to some young athletic trainers, and we've already talked about that a little bit, but kind of what would you tell them? Like you said, networking and other things, but anything else that you can think of that would be helpful in advancing somebody as they getting started in their careers.
Yeah. Well, I think networking is huge. You know, like I said, it's a pretty small circle, and then if someone comes to me and is like, "Hey, do you know so and so at such and such college?" I may not know them, but I bet I can find somebody that does without a whole lot of effort. I mean, it's like the 6 degrees of separation. I think in athletic training is more like maybe half that. There's probably like three
Right.
degrees of separation. Um, so I think that's huge. I think, um, as I think back, this has been fun to kind of reminisce and how did I end up where I am and
Right.
done what I've done to this point. I think part of it, without sounding whatever, I would encourage, like, do more than what the minimum, like, don't just do what you need to do, like, do more than that. Like, I don't know, that's not coming across the right way. Like, don't just check the box. Like, yep, I got to work. Like, going back all the way to the beginning of this, talking about spending, I don't know how many hours crushing cans in the old training room. Like, that had absolutely nothing to do with athletic
Right.
training. But what it did do, I think, looking back on it, is it showed that, wow, this kid must really have an interest in this, or else he wouldn't be back there crushing cans for an hour and a half
Right.
just to be around. Um, so I'm probably saying this in a very poor way, but the just what I'm would encourage young professionals and even still in school is get involved and do more than what's required, I guess,
Right.
or if that makes sense.
You need,
Go
I think,
above and beyond to
yeah,
just be around it, because the more you're around it, the more you're going to learn, the more chances you're going to have to see and do things that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And and thirdly, it just shows your commitment to wanting to be, as good as you can be and be part of the team.
right. I would probably classify that go find your opportunities rather than wait for your opportunities to come to you. And so you kind of make or break your opportunities to do that. And so your opportunity was crushing cans, and somebody, Tony or Rex or Neil or whatever, were like they're paying attention, or a couple of the senior level students like Alito or Dave Jessup or Cheryl Store or somebody like that is in there going, "Hey, these two guys, they get it." So that's coming to back to them in that aspect. And you probably look for the same things in your own situation now, is that you're talking to, you have a great, um I, I commend you on hiring young athletic trainers, but you have a balance of some older guys, some old dudes, some old
I'm older
females.
than us,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
and that's saying something.
Yeah, exactly. You have a nice mixture of experience in you, and that, to me, they both benefit from each other in doing those
Absolutely.
things. And so then when they talk to you about some of these younger athletic trainers, like they're saying, "Hey, maybe I want to slow down a little bit, or PRN or whatever," and you're asking like, "Well, okay, who do you recommend? Who are we looking at here? What are we ready to, is this person ready to move up to kind of the role that you're in or something like that?" And maybe being able to have that kind of mixture in there kind of helps everyone. And um, you're looking for those younger athlete trainers that are creating their own opportunities to do different things. And
Yeah,
or at some point in time, somebody's going to have to take over for you and Chad with USA Football. Who's that going to be?
exactly. Right.
You know,
No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, I remember, now that you say that, Ralph said something to that effect a while back. He's like, who are you grooming? Who's going to take over? Because you can only do this for so long.
right?
Um, in my mind, I'm like, 28 Olympics. Okay, so that's 4.5 more years from now. I'm
Yeah,
like, I could still be doing this for 4.5 more years,
yeah,
um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You gotta. It's like it's just a continuous cycle. You can't get too heavy one way or the other. I appreciate you saying that about our staff. I think we do have a really good staff here and a good mix of experience and some good young guns, as I call them, that get it. That they get it, they understand it. They just don't have the full experience yet, and to be able to have the Dave Jessups and the Jeff Franciosis and Miho Sale. We've got a ton, at least 6 or 7 that's got 20 plus years of experience.
right.
And we got some brand new fresh out of school grads, and it's just a good mix to have. And they do. You learn from each other. You know, these new grads coming out are, like we talked about earlier, they're being taught things that we weren't taught.
Right.
And they can pass that along and help us old timers along with some new techniques or whatever. And then vice versa, they can help these young guns just by some experience and some tips and some things that they've learned over the years as well. So
Yeah.
it's pretty, at the end of the day, it's just, it's a fun job, in my opinion.
We all did it. We really, honestly, I mean, considering our other alternatives of slugging it out somewhere else, doing something else. I mean, I personally said I did this because I just wanted to get into games for free and see as many games as I wanted to, So I've seen a lot of games. It's still hard for me. It's still hard for me for some of my kids' sports to pay $5 to get in the door. I really just want to say, I'm the athletic trainer.
Right. That, and it's hard to watch a game from the stands.
Oh yeah.
Or I know we're getting off on time, but it's also hard to be with the parents sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go watch the game. Like everybody, I swear a lot of my kids, friends, parents think I'm a jerk because I would always, not always, but most times kind of sit off by myself to watch the games because I can't.
They're not watching the same thing. They're not watching the same thing you are. And
right.
My wife and I just had that experience last week. It was the last home volleyball game, and Cindy was dealing with some other stuff, and she just wanted to not be around the parents. And so we sat on the other side of the gym, like in the upper level at Blue River. And at the end of the game, she goes, "You know what? This was kind of nice." I said, "Yeah, I've been trying to tell you this the whole time." I said, you can socialize later after the game or before the game, but if you just want to focus in and watch the game and watch Carolyn play, then don't sit around anybody else because it'll just frustrate you because they're so worried about all the other stuff or their own kid. Or I mean, we got parents that are like checking max preps like every day for their kids' stats and stuff. I'm like, I don't even care about that. I just want to, it's, and you've experienced this and some of your advice probably to me is that you only get a limited amount of time to watch your kid play sports. And why do I want to sit there and be angry or mad? Or I just want to enjoy it. I just want to watch them play and watch them do well and enjoy that. And I don't want to have to deal with all the other gossip garbage over there. Yeah, I got it. I'm learning it.
Yeah. It doesn't take long. You catch on to that pretty quick. I don't know.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, and this will be a really good one. And I know you're doing great things over there at Franciscan. So, and it took some time for you to do this, so I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and it's fun to kind of stroll down memory lane a little bit and tell some stories. We should have an unedited behind the scenes version of stories that maybe doesn't get to production.
We never got around to the Try Guy house or any of that stuff, but maybe we could have Sean on, and it'll be 2 parts of the Try Guy house. We could have Klaus on. He could fill in for Chad.
Yeah definitely he would be, because he was a good member of the group.
Yeah, exactly.
So well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Troy. I appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm happy to chat about the old days and some new days, and hopefully somebody will enjoy listening to this.
I'm sure your crew will be all over this. So
All right.
We've
Thanks,
gone
bud.
Off the roll with Dave Weikel. I want to thank Dave for coming on the podcast today and sitting down and having a great conversation. It was a little unusual for being in my shop, but it was fall break and I had kids running around the house, and I knew there would be pretty quiet out there to record the podcast. So again, we always appreciate hearing feedback and your support. You can reach out to us on offtherollpodcast@gmail.com or offtherollpod1 on Twitter, or my personal Facebook page to give us some feedback on the podcast. It's interesting. I have some of my kids at Eastern Hancock High School that are following the podcast a little bit, so I think that's a little interesting. I don't know if they can't get enough of me, or they just want to hear if there's a different life out there than what they see me at in my job. So for those Eastern Hancock listeners out there, a shout out to you guys. I appreciate the support from you as well. So kind of an unusual situation, but hopefully they learned something about athletic training through this. So just wanted to, again, say thanks to Dave for coming on the podcast. Reach out to us, give us some ratings, give us some feedback, and we'll look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks. Take care.